Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. And our top story today, how much your personal information is worth to cyber criminals. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Dr. Ravi Sen. He's an associate professor at the Mays Business School at Texas A&M University. Ravi, so great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Yeah, great to see you, Jeffrey. Thanks for inviting.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this is coming right on the heels to our conversation about protecting your data and what the value of data is in the open market to cyber criminals is coming right on the heels of our recent conversation with Experian, talking about the credit score and maintaining your privacy. So this couldn't come in a more timely matter. Ravi, let's start with some of the basics here. What types of data is out there? I mean, obviously we've heard about social security number, we've heard about date of birth, our address, our name, but what's out there lurking in the dark web?
Right. So when we think about the data that's out there, and especially data that's valuable to someone out there, but doesn't belong to them, belongs to us, we think in terms of our financial data, our credit card information, our MSA, bank accounts, and so on. We think in terms of our PII, personally identifiable data, anything that can link any activity or any action to us as an individual. So we think about those things, and generally those are the things that are also targeted by hackers out there. Some of the data that we tend to not think so much about, but it's also very important to protect, is what is commonly known as digital footprint. So when we interact online, in our social media accounts, we post something, we pictures, videos, audios, and things like those. We read something, our location data, and so on. We don't think about them, but they leave a lot of evidence behind, which can be collected, collated, and analyzed, and basically used against us. So those are the also kind of data that we need to think about, and that how to minimize our digital footprints, and if we cannot, how to manage them in a way that minimizes the risk to us from hackers out there.
And obviously, Ravi, this information is very valuable. It's not only valuable to you as an individual, being able to have your location, your social security number. We use that to get on airplanes, to open bank accounts, to open credit cards. This information, exceptionally valuable on the dark web. And you know, I hear cases all the time of people getting social security numbers and having their accounts opened up. And as I mentioned, we talked to Experian last week. People are doing a lot of fraudulent, and especially during these horrific times with the pandemic and being locked and quarantined.
Right. So social security numbers are often used in identity theft. And identity theft is something like, while I agree that most of us don't experience it, it's like several incidents out there which we hear about, but it always happens to someone else. But unless it happens to you, people don't realize that it can be a nightmare for some individuals. Trying to get your credit scores back, try to just sort through that mess, it's not an easy thing. So social security numbers in that sense are very valuable to hackers out there, because it allows them to not just steal the identity, but use it for financial gains. And the victims are the one who bear the burden of all those losses. So the kind of paperwork you have to go through, the amount of form filling and contacting your banks and insurance companies and a whole bunch of other organizations to make sure that those accounts are safe from the identity thief, it's not an easy task for most individuals. Again, until it happens to you, people don't realize how valuable that social security number is. And they might end up sharing it in places or in locations or in the forums where they should not be doing that. So they do carry a lot of value for hackers in that sense. Although the recent trend has been that your payment accounts seem to be more valuable. At least that's what I've seen the last couple of years. Those are more valuable, followed by your social media accounts, and then followed by your credit card number and PII, which is social security numbers. So in terms of prices that they fetch on the dark web, they are not fetching as much price as, say, your payment accounts, your PayPal account, and things like those.
And you recently, I'm kind of referring to an article that you wrote, and I'll post this in the link below the show. But you also talk in this article about cookies and how your browsing history, and you alluded to this, I think, in some of your previous comments, your browsing history, these cookies can be used digitally because they're an imprint of where you visited. And so there probably are steps you can take to clear those cookies using, cache clearing, et cetera, on your browser. But you need to be aware of what these browsers track, whether it's Microsoft Edge or Firefox or DuckDuckGo or whatever, right? I mean, they all use cookies in different ways. This is something, you talk about that digital imprint, this is something that really tracks where you're going. And by the way, cyber criminals, if they place malware on your system, they can read, I believe they can read these cookies as well.
Oh, yeah. And so these cookies, the idea was they were meant to make it convenient for you to browse the web. It made it convenient for the website administrators to track a session, to make sure that they're giving you the information you need and so on. But they carry information which can be misused. And if someone has access to that information, here's a simple example. Suppose someone has access to the cookies on your computer, which has been stored by your browser and left by various websites. And they can use that to find out, okay, these are the websites that you visit often enough. Then they can go ahead and try to look for some of your digital footprints, find out, okay, what are your interests, what your likes and dislikes and so on and so forth, and craft a phishing email and send it to you, where they will provide you with a link and they can say, okay, click on this link and it will take you to the site which has content that is of interest to you. When you click on that, you might reach a site, but it won't be the original site that you thought you are going to go. It would be a fake site which the hacker would have developed. And just by visiting that site, you might be putting your computer at risk because it might end up installing malware on you. So now it seems like a lengthy process in a way, but it's very much possible, happens all the time. People visit websites which have malware and they are used, those sites are used to deliver the malware to your computers. It's one of the most common vulnerabilities out there. XSS, cross-site scripting, allows for this kind of attack to go on. So yes, people have to be very careful about cookies that are left on the system. Now, having said that, if you are visiting a website belonging to an organization or hosted by someone in the European Union, the site informs you, and you have to agree to that before you can visit the site. Now, if you don't agree, you can still do that. But if the site is run by US organizations or organizations outside EU, sometimes if you don't agree to it, they don't give you full access to the site, or you won't be able to visit the site and so on. But before agreeing to it, what EU law says is that it will tell you what data they collect on you, who they are going to share the data with, what are they going to do with the data, and so on. And if you don't agree with it, then they won't do that. And but it is still confined to only EU at this point. And although California passed a very strong privacy law recently, but I'm not sure if this part is covered in that. So there you know what information you are leaving behind, what is being collected, how it's going to be used, and so on. So there's still a better way to approach this problem than what is happening in most of the world, where we don't know what information is being collected on us while we visit a website and what information is being left back on our own computer. So we just go there, we start browsing, and don't think twice about it. But we need to be worried about that.
Absolutely. Well, Ravi, I need to take a quick break. When we come back, maybe we'll talk about preventing cyber fraud and what you can do. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking to Dr. Ravi Sen from the Maple Business School at Texas A&M University. Ravi, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Good to be here.
I want to talk, before we kind of get into some of the tips and things that we need to think about as we're browsing, whether you're using your phones or computer. Let's talk about some of these other fraudulent behaviors that have happened during the quarantine, during pandemic. A lot of Social Security fraud, a lot of people thinking that they're being reached out to by the Internal Revenue Service. That's not the case, but it creates a lot of opportunity for cyber criminals to get a hold of data.
Yeah, that's true. These were anxious times for people the last 2.5 years or so. And that's what many of these threat agents were counting on, to prey on that anxiety, to prey on those worries, and to prey on their lack of understanding and knowledge about how these scams work. And when you get a call from an agency like IRS or someone claiming to be from IRS, the first thought is not to verify that. The first thought is more of a panic and concern that, okay, what did I do wrong over here? And that's what they are counting on, to get you to act in haste based on some fear or concern, and do something which is going to harm them. Now, how to deal with that kind of thing is IRS is doing a lot of work in that sense. They do send out regular mailers information, and they have this on their website also, that do not contact people via phone or email to tell them that they are behind taxes and things like those. And so they are doing the best they can in that sense, but more education is needed through public service announcements and things like those. I will give you my own example. This was about 7-8 years back. My wife receives a call. It says that I owe back taxes, and I have to call this certain number, and if I don't take care of it within the next half an hour, there will be someone to arrest me. We both being from outside US at that time, we were on this. She was not even a citizen. She got worried about what's going on. She called me. Obviously, I just called the local police station to ask them, is there something, is there a warrant or something like that? And they clarified it. But I had the presence of mind to do that because I have already seen a whole bunch of scams from Nigeria and all over the places which worked this way. But not everyone has that kind of background or understanding to see whether this is scam or not. And it's really serious that how often this scam succeeds. Because people have lost millions of dollars total by sending out gift cards and payment to these scammers when they get these calls. And IRS is not the only one. In recent times, some hackers have used this really interesting approach to steal millions of dollars by getting people to wire money to their accounts. In one of the recent cases, what the threat agent did was, he called a senior manager in England, claiming to be the CEO of the company, speaking from Germany, and asked him to wire about, I think, £250,000, something like that, to a certain account over the weekend. The manager, thinking that he's talking to his German boss, went ahead and did that. And on Monday, when they come back, he calls them to say if they receive the money and all. It turns out that there was no request for some wire transfer. And this scam has happened and lost in the last 2 years. So from working from home, COVID, and all these kind of things have kind of contributed in a way that people are not as much alert about these kind of scams as they would maybe in normal times. So a lot of these kind of scams have happened over the last 1.5 years, and I don't see any signs of these going away, because people are not taking the precaution. And again, I don't blame them, because they had a whole bunch of other things to worry about than trying to figure out whether a call is a scam or not.
Ravi, when it comes to, I think you mentioned the California, I think it's called the CCPA.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that that's some legislation that was passed to protect consumers. And I think other states have kind of jumped in there. And I would assume that, given what happened with the Colonial Pipeline hack, the federal government trying to ramp up and try to protect consumers. But in your estimation, are the federal government, are states in a position really to be successful in thwarting some of these threats? I mean, they can't even, in some cases, really can't even prevent hacks and threats for some of their own systems.
Right. Yeah.
Can you rely on that?
So now again, I'm not a legal expert, but here's my take on that. Generally, when we think about laws and regulations, they're not only supposed to, the main objective seems to be, at least when we look at crimes and things like those, to deter criminals from doing certain things. In case of privacy laws, data protection laws, and again, I must quantify that I'm not the legal expert, but based on my understanding from cybersecurity point of view, the laws seem to focus a lot on encouraging those who handle our data to be more responsible when it comes to protecting those. So if a social media company collect data on their subscribers, they should take that extra step to protect the data. Having said that, 100% protection of data, at least in my opinion, is not possible. There are several reasons for that, economic, technical, and so on, that no company can promise you that I'm going to protect your data every time, all the time. And so these laws are supposed to just encourage them to do as much as they can. We say, at the end of the day, many of these companies are profit-making firms. They just cannot throw money at protecting data at the expense of their bottom line. But these laws want to encourage them to do the best that they can to protect the data, and then not just take the steps that are needed to comply with certain laws and so on. So will these laws be effective in preventing data breaches in future? I don't think so. Would they reduce the number of data breaches? They might definitely do so, especially if companies basically are made to comply with these laws. Can they do something to reduce the impact of data breaches on individual victims? Definitely they can do so. So for example, if a bank is breached and the law requires them to pay for identity theft protection for the victims for the next 1 year, so that is definitely going to help the victims in a way. So in that way, these laws are definitely needed and they will help. But coming to your original question, would they basically lead to a situation where we don't have any data breaches? I don't believe we are there yet, or we would be there anytime soon.
Yeah, I certainly don't think it's realistic to think that there aren't going to be any data breaches. I think this is, we've kind of crossed this digital frontier. It's just a result of how we transact business now. It's all done digitally. Right. Unfortunately, there's vulnerabilities. But I think what we're doing here today, which is education, making sure that people are aware of this and here are the steps that you can take to protect yourself, that's going to go probably further in a lot of ways than having a law somewhere. Because if you can't get to the bad actors, if they're in a different country or a country where you can't even extradite to the United States, or can't even, you're not in a pact of some type, you're going to be in a, you can't rely on that.
Right. That's absolutely true, and that has been one of the major problems with cybersecurity as a whole. Unlike any other crime, traditional crimes, here the threat agent could be sitting in some different company, different location, and that makes things very difficult. And it doesn't only just apply to cyber crime. In fact, countries are right now struggling with the cyber war, because we have seen so many examples where nation states have been involved in targeting infrastructure of other countries. Ukraine was targeted by Russia. Recently, this U.S. oil supply chain was targeted. Investigation is still going on, whether it was just run-of-the-mill hackers or anyone else's start. Allegations have been made against China, Iran, South Korea, North Korea, and all these countries of indulging in these kind of activities. There have been discussions in the United Nations to come up with treaties which everyone agrees to, something similar to what they have for chemical warfare or biological warfare, that countries would not indulge in cyber warfare. But those are still at discussion stage, and if we know from experience, things in UN take their own time if they do happen at some point. So for regular crime itself, right now countries have their own laws and regulations. Even when they figure out, okay, that the attack is coming from this place, and that itself is not easy to do. Attribution is very challenging sometimes in cyber crime. They don't have any treaties or any other sort of framework in place where they can extradite these criminals and charge them with the crime they have committed. So, given this global nature of this problem, for one country to try to solve it on their own is, to say it is challenging is understatement. But on the plus side, there's a lot of very simple things that we as individuals can do, which minimizes our exposure to these sort of threats. And when I say simple, they are really simple, and one would think common sense things to do, especially in day and age where we all are so used to digital devices, mobile devices, computer devices, and so on, that one would assume that by now we know how to be a responsible user of these devices and services. Unfortunately, we still don't take those common sense steps. And if we do that, one would be surprised that you reduce your risk by a significant amount, not by a small increment, something like that. You just take those incidents and you take those steps, and basically you take care of a whole bunch of attacks out there which are not going to impact you. So, and people need to know about it at some point, at least either through training in their organizations or in the schools or in this orientation courses. Some way has to figure out to get this message across to people that do these simple things, and then you can stop worrying about many of those attacks that are happening all the time.
Well, it's certainly, just like financial literacy, it's something that should be taught, and it's a skill like anything else, and
right.
We have to be vigilant. Dr. Ravi Sen, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
But if you're tired of the same old stuff. Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.